Welcome back to Ben's Book Club. Today we are diving into the book ADD Money. In this explainer, we're going to look at a genuinely revolutionary approach to personal finance by author and accountant Tina Mathams. For so long, we've been taught that if you struggle with money, well, you just lack discipline. But this book radically reframes our financial struggles. It proposes that if you're having a hard time with money, it might not be a moral failure at all, but rather a simple mismatch in brain wiring. Today, we're going to explore how to build a warm, non-judgmental financial support system that actually works for neurodivergent brains.
Okay, let's be real for a second. Have you ever set up a perfect spreadsheet, sworn you were going to track every single penny, and then totally abandon it like 3 days later? If you just felt a twinge of guilt, honestly, take a deep breath and let it go. Standard budgeting relies entirely on a neurotypical brain that thrives on predictability and consistent long-term behavior. If your brain doesn't work that way, well, that budget was doomed from the start. Okay, let's dive into this and start dismantling that guilt.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 5 quick stops. First, the hidden ADHD tax. Second, why this is not a willpower problem. Third, your money support system. Fourth, hacks for neurodivergent brains. And finally, forgiveness over frugality. Together, we're going to build a shame-free, dopamine-friendly system over the next few minutes.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the hidden ADD tax and the real cost of executive dysfunction.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept from Mathams is how it exposes the very literal, everyday costs of trying to navigate a neurotypical financial world. The ADHD tax isn't just a metaphor, it's real money leaving your bank account. It's the literal financial cost of being neurodivergent. It's what happens when memory lapses, time blindness, or just sheer overwhelm take the wheel. But here's the compassionate reframe. These lost dollars are not signs that you are bad with money. Not at all. They are simply symptoms of how your brain processes time and priority.
Oh man, tell me if any of this hits a little too close to home. Late fees because a bill simply vanished from your mind? That expired food you bought with the absolute best of intentions completely forgotten in the crisper drawer, otherwise known as the graveyard of good intentions. Or those monthly subscriptions you've meant to cancel for, half a year now, but just never quite get around to? Or constantly paying replacement costs for lost keys, phones, wallets, the whole shebang. If this sounds like your life, please know you are absolutely not a unique failure. This is a shared, painful reality for so many neurodivergent folks, and acknowledging it is step 1 to fixing it.
Moving right along to Section 2, not a willpower problem. It's all about rewiring our approach.
And this brilliantly illustrates the disconnect. We need to shift our focus away from the pain of that ADHD tax and understand exactly why traditional advice totally fails what Mathams calls the intraspaced nervous system. Think about it. Traditional advice demands spreadsheets, sheer discipline, and rigid 5-year plans. But the ADHD brain? It operates on an intraspaced nervous system. It needs visuals, it craves novelty and dopamine, and it actually requires friction to slow down impulses. It's like trying to run a gas car on electricity. The big takeaway for you is this. If your brain requires urgency and novelty to engage, a boring 5-year plan is literally never going to work.
Which brings us to Section 3, your money support system, and why we are officially ditching the budget.
Notice how we aren't using that dreaded B word anymore? Instead of a rigid budget, Mathams advocates for an ADHD-friendly spending plan using what we call visual banking. See, if all your money sits in one main checking account, the ADHD brain simply sees a giant pile of cash that screams, "Hey, I'm available to spend right now." But by visually separating your money into specific digital buckets like needs, valued, nice to have, and fun funds, you create clear boundaries. It's flexible, it aligns with what you actually care about, and crucially, it actively makes room for fun without that crushing guilt.
This quote from the source material is profoundly important. For an understimulated brain, a purchase isn't just a transaction, it's a dopamine hit. I mean, really think about that. When you impulse spend, you aren't being malicious or irresponsible. Your brain is simply seeking stimulation. It's a perfectly logical coping strategy for an understimulated mind. Understanding this drastically reduces the deep shame that usually surrounds emotional spending.
Let's move to a practical fix and see how this builds a better system. Since we know the brain wants dopamine, we don't rely on willpower to stop spending. Instead, we use the 24-hour rule to add some friction. Step 1. You feel the impulse to buy something over $50. Step 2. You add friction by forcing a 24-hour waiting period. Step 3, you literally just let the dopamine urge cool off. Making the spending process slightly harder gives your executive function time to finally catch up with your impulses.
Okay, Section 4, Hacks for Neurodivergent Brains, where we're borrowing some neat tricks from psychology.
So these hacks are highly tactical, practical tools borrowed directly from behavioral psychology to help you maintain follow-through without completely burning out. First up is body doubling. This means having someone, a money buddy, present with you even virtually while you tackle daunting tasks like opening your mail or paying bills. I'm curious, do you think having someone sit with you while you pay bills is absolute genius, or maybe a little awkward? For many with ADHD, this simple human presence acts as an incredible anchor that completely overcomes task paralysis.
All right, next up, and this is practically a non-negotiable, automation is king. The sources are incredibly clear on this. If your system is boring or complicated, you won't do it. Period. If you have to actively remember to move money on the 15th of every month, you have already lost the game. You absolutely must automate your bills, your savings, and yes, even those transfers into your fun money bucket. Your major takeaway here is to take the burden completely off your executive function. Let the robots do the heavy lifting.
So the crucial point is keeping things fresh, which brings us to gamification and habit stacking. For ADHD brains, maintaining momentum means keeping the novelty alive. Try stacking a money check-in onto an existing habit you already do, like drinking your morning coffee. Or use fun savings challenges to turn a boring chore into a novel game. Keeping that spark alive is essential for long-term consistency.
Actually, scratch that whole idea of marathon finance days. Please do not sit down for a 3-hour spreadsheet session. Use short bursts for your financial tasks, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. Breaking these check-ins into 10 or 15-minute chunks totally prevents the wall of burnout and keeps you in the driver's seat.
And finally, Section 5, Forgiveness over Frugality, where we talk about healing the money story.
This brings us to perhaps the most compassionate theme of our entire explainer. We really have to tackle the deep emotional layer of money management. The bottom line is this: shame leads directly to financial avoidance. When you feel guilty about past mistakes, what happens? You stop opening your banking apps. You stop checking the mail. And that avoidance triggers a spiral that only makes the ADHD tax even higher. You absolutely cannot fix the spreadsheet until you deal with the feelings underneath it. Acknowledging your messy history without a single ounce of judgment is the mandatory prerequisite to moving forward.
Looking at reader takeaways from the sources, the consensus is incredibly clear. This approach provides intense validation. It acknowledges those messy realities, like having zero savings or a history of debt, without judgment. The focus is always on forward movement, not demanding perfect discipline. Now, just to be totally impartial, some readers did note a critique. The book lacks specific guidance for managing money alongside a spouse or partner. But as a framework for individual empowerment, it is an absolute lifeline.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to consider today. Look at your current setup and ask yourself, how can you build a financial system that actually forgives your mistakes instead of punishing them? Remember, better systems will always beat stronger willpower. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.